guys, so this recipe is going to be a bit of fun. This is going to be some brioche baps, finger rolls, brioche baps, but I've never actually made this recipe before. I'm literally making it up. I've written it out. I think it'll work, but we're going to have to just find out. Now, this is going to be a really good way for you to learn how bread making works and some of the ingredients, especially the use of fats and sugar, and how I would want to use them, how you can use them to maybe adapt a recipe that you've already got that's not quite working for you, or make up a new one. So we're going to start off with 620 grams of flour. This is Canadian's finest. Next up, what we're definitely going to need at the start, we're going to need some salt. And yes, let's get that one in. So we'll tear that, we'll put that one straight in. So the salt here is 12.4 grams. Should really have done it on the other ones. We're going to use fresh, dried yeast. I'm out of fresh yeast, it's nothing much more complicated than that. I usually prefer fresh yeast, but dried yeast can be used just the same. So we're going to half it, just under half is usually where we want to go, and that's exactly what we're doing here. We're going to go for 6 grams. If I was using fresh yeast, I'd be looking at about 13, that's 2.2%. Next up, we're going to do the eggs. So we want 155 grams. I believe usually an egg is about 50 grams, if I remember correctly. $49. 149 grams. Now I'm not going to crack another egg for 5 grams, but I can add 5 more mils of water or 5 more grams of water or milk. Okay, so we're going to add the milk now. So for that, it's 248 grams. We hope this is right. What I've done is I've added the milk and the egg, because they both are liquids, together, and that makes about 65 grams. Now obviously they're not as liquid as water is, so of course I've got to bear in mind we're going to add about 10% of oil and a bit of butter as well, so that will make it quite sticky. So I'm hoping that we've got it right. I've got a good balance. So what was it, 248 grams of this stuff. So with the oil, it gets a little bit confusing. So I want to add 10% oil, which is quite a lot. Now anything above 5% will affect the dough. It will make it harder to knead, because basically what does oil do? It goes over stuff, it covers it, and it stops it being able, it makes it slippery. So when it's going in the mixer, these little glands of gluten or protein, they're not going to be able to be kneaded that well, but they're going to be protected by this fat. So if we add it all in at the start, above 5%, if we add all that in at the start, then it's going to be harder to knead the dough. The other side is it's not going to be that much of a problem, because we want it soft anyway, we don't want it that kneaded. But then the other side is well, there's quite a lot of liquid in oil, so we don't want to mix too dry and then suddenly get wet. So we've also got fat in the eggs as well, egg yolks, that's fat, and milk, there's fat in that. So I'm going to go half and half, I think. We're going to play it safe. So we're going to do, 31 grams here. And then we're going to mix like that. And then we're going to add the other 31 grams near the end when we add our sugar. Doesn't like that. Which is 93 grams. So it's going to be quite sweet. And then again, same 10% as the oil, so 61 grams or 62 grams, sorry, it'll be. So we'll just chuck all this in one go. That was 30, so what's that? 70. We can get a knife or we can use our dough scraper, just chop it up into little blocks, best you can. And this just means that when we go to mixing it, we can just chuck it in a block at a time. and it's more chance of it getting absorbed nice and easily, as opposed to it having to knead it for longer because you've still got these clumps in. So anyway, let's get mixing. So we've got all our ingredients apart from, in fact, let's chuck that oil in there, and then let's weigh our other oil in here. So let's get to the mixer and let's get mixing. So we start off with the flour, which has also got the salt, the yeast in it. And we've got our egg, oil and milk concoction. Sugar, fat and butter is just down there. So let's put this on to mix. That's a slow mix for about 3 minutes. After about a minute, it's sounding quite dry in there. Let's have a feel. You know what? Needs just a drop more milk. I think that'll probably do it. It's probably that 5 millilitres that I should have added. Okay, there we go. Okay, let's have a little feel of that. It's a bit lumpy. Okay, it's fairly sticky. As you can feel that, it's strong already and firm. I think we can leave it like that. I think that'll be fine. Okay, I'm going to chuck in the sugar. I'm delaying this. Again, like the fats, it will affect the quality of the dough. Too much sugar will get everything going too quickly. And adding it in later allows the dough to develop properly. Okay, now we're good. Let's get this going fast. Set the timer for 5 minutes. Before then, we're going to add the existing fat. And you can see that we've got nice structures going on of gluten. You can see some long strands there. You see bits flick off. That's where it's not quite incorporated 100%. You don't really want, but it happens all the time when you're using fat at the start of your dough. Okay, so after 5 minutes, we've got a fairly nice and strong dough. It's got a nice little glaze on it, but we're going to add to that. We're going to make it even more glazy, even more fatty. So in goes our butter, which we cut up into little bits. We're going to crank that down to slow to start with, see if we can just incorporate a little bit. And while we're at the same time, we'll chuck the rest of the oil in as well. Don't think it make much difference. So we're going to do that nice and slowly because we don't want any oil splattering out until it gets incorporated. Just allow that to lead gently in. So about 3 minutes later, it's looking like that. Now we're just going to leave it on fast, and that should bring it all together into a dough that's ready to go into the next stage of the fermentation. Hey, so here is our dough that's sat there nicely. I've got a bowl here with a bit of flour in the bottom. You could use some oil. Generally my rule is if you put oil in the mix, then you can use oil in the bowl. But if it's French, you never would add oil, but you never add oil to a French dough because they just want the flour, water, salt and yeast unless it's actually designed to be in the dish. So it doesn't really matter in this case, but if it's a little bit wet, it's on the wet side, and sometimes you can add a little bit of flour, even though we don't want to incorporate any extra flour. Sometimes adding a little bit of flour around the outside will dry it up a little bit. So, oh, yes. Okay, so that is now our dough. We're going to leave this covered with a carrier bag, and I think I'll leave it ambient. I'll check the temperature of it. If it's over 24 degrees, it's going to go in the fridge. If it's below 24 degrees, then I'll leave it ambient for an hour, give it a fold, and then another hour. We'll then decide on the dough temperature, whether it wants to be in the fridge or out in the ambient. Okay, so an hour later, we're going to do our first stretch and fold. So, have a look. It did go in the fridge. It read 26 degrees, and the sun is coming out, and the oven's on, so it's getting really warm in here, so it's a good job we did. Now we're sitting at 23.5, so yeah, I think we'll put the second stage of the bulk ferment after stretch and fold back into the fridge again. So to do our stretch and fold, I'm going to do it in the bowl, and look at that, instantaneous. So we're going to first take the side out, fold into the middle, turn the bowl, take that side out, and fold that into the middle. It's coming out the bowl a little bit, don't worry about that. Then take the next side out and fold that one into the middle, and that one there, fold that into the middle. Lastly, this one here, fold that over as well. So we can turn it over if we want as well. Look at that. That's all you need to do. It doesn't have to be that complicated. Here we go, stretch and fold. That's a nice smooth dough. Cover it again. And we're gonna put that back in the fridge for another hour. Okay, so now it's time to divide our dough. So we've had that kept in the fridge now. What temperature is it set at? Might have been in there a little bit longer. So 21 degrees, that's fine. 21.5. So we're gonna flour our surface lightly, take our dough piece out, and we're gonna get straight to work. So we're gonna create a little area at the side here, and that's gonna be where we're going to place our dough pieces as we divide them. We're gonna crack on, and we're gonna divide this to 100 gram pieces. So that should make about 12. So to divide our piece, we're going to take a piece of dough which we think is about 100 grams, and the more we do this, the more accurate we'll get. And if we're 3-4 grams over either way or under, then that's fine, that's fine. And the more we do this, the better. Of course, we haven't done any folds or anything like that, so this dough is a little bit uneven, so you will find that when you think you know it, it's not quite right, but in terms of how you do it on volume. But you know, as you get a little bit more used to it, you'll feel that the dough is either 100 grams or not. But hey, it may take you a few years of practice to really perfect that. All I would say is it's better to do it quickly and be a little bit inaccurate than it is to take all day doing it. You know, if you take too long, then the dough is going to get sticky and it could be hard to use. So we've got a baking sheet here. It's got to be a heavy duty one that's capable of going up to temperatures of 230 at least. Otherwise it will warp and your bread just won't be as good. So now we're just going to pre-shape, and we're going to put these into balls. So you might need a bit of flour, you may not. Hopefully you won't, but let's have a little bit on the table just in case. So we're just going to roll these out into, or sort of mould these out into rounds. There you go. And we're going to do a combination here of burger buns and finger rolls as well, because I've got some hot dogs I got reduced the other day, and I want to make some hot dogs with these as well. This is kind of like a practice for when I've got some friends around next week. If a bit of dough gets stuck to the table, it's best to remove it straight away, otherwise it will start sticking to the other pieces, which is what I was just doing there. So we've got some baps. Let's tray these up straight away. We don't need to do a second one or anything like that. We probably could have just put these straight on the thing. I want some good batching in this, so we'll get 3. Yeah, we'll get 3 quite nicely. down there and up here. We always work from the first one we did. And we'll just put that little one there for fun. And then we're going to make these into finger rolls. We'll leave them to rest for 1 minute, just a minute, just to give it that little bit of time to relax before we then make these finger rolls. So I'm just going to pause this and I'll get back in the minute. Okay, so that's a minute up. Let's get cracking. So take our first one and dust a bit of flour around. Then we just roll it with our hands, starting from the middle. We only need one hand really. Okay, so we've got a bit of flour on the table, and we'll try without any more extra flour. That should be fine. We're just going to roll from the middle, and if we've got a few little blobs at the end, just get the other hand and just give that a go. They will kind of contract a little bit, so you want to do it slightly bigger than you want them to be, because they will, look at it, it's shrinking like right now. So in that goes, making sure you've got the seam down. Same again, so roll that out like that. These are quite large ones. If you need a bit of flour, get a bit of flour. And this is where the rest time comes into play. If we rested it for a little bit longer, they would probably hold their shape a little bit better. Okay, so I pop them on there with not really much space at all. They're really quite tight. If you want to, like this one here, is contracted a little bit. Woo. Give it another stretch. Same with this one here. Don't be mucking around with them too much. So it's not ideal, but probably should have rested them for maybe 5 minutes before rolling them out. There we go. There you go. So they're not that, they're pretty close together, yeah? I'll try and make them as even as possible. That'll probably relax back in. Might just give them a tuck in a minute just to push them all level. Oh, there you go, done. So yeah, they'll prove up nicely. They'll batch together. Again, you could probably fit, what, 6, 7 in a row there. But again, if you want to spread them out a little bit more, you can do that as well. So they are looking good. If we wanted to batch them, we could push them down. I'm quite happy with they will batch a little bit. So I'm quite happy with what we're gonna get from that. So they're just gonna hopefully just touch each other. Whether it's we wait for that in the proving or when they actually bake in the oven, they will obviously get a bit of oven spring and pop together. So yeah, I'm quite happy with them, to be fair. I will leave them like that to prove. It's really warm in here, so it probably won't take too long, maybe an hour, hour and a half, depending on how quickly that yeast gets working. Okay, so it took a little bit longer than expected, about 2.5, 3 hours. One thing I did forget to mention is actually you should do it on a separate tray, because the finger rolls prove a bit quicker than the normal baps. So that's something to maybe do next time. But hey, we're still gonna get really good results. So I'm just gonna do some egg wash on top with a little pinch of salt. Okay, great. So they're going to go in the oven, 220 degrees, and we're going to put the top heat on as we turn it up. The stone is nice and hot, so these should come out in about 10-15 minutes. And there we go. So, first of all, when we take our soft baps out of the oven of any kind, we give them a bang, like that. And that just resettles it and stops the tops from collapsing. Not quite sure how it works or why it works, but it's really important that you do it, otherwise the bottoms will start sort of swelling and they'll drop down. So yeah, these are looking great. Nice bit of colour on them. I did 220, and then on the last, for about 6 to 8 minutes, and then turned them round and turned the top heat off and just let them bake like that. It was really nice and hot in there, and they've they're going to be really nice and soft, but you do need to let them cool for a little bit until you can eat them.